Today's session will be one of many over the next year, which are intended to explore topics and issues related to data values and how the Data Values Manifesto ensures that data does not harm or exclude, but rather empowers everyone. Today's session agenda consists of a few parts. First, we'll learn more about the Data Values Manifesto and hear from an organization leading action to democratize data skills and literacy. Then we'll meet and hear from our new cohort of data value advocates that are leading and working to shift power structures in data systems. We will also hear from all of you, as we'll be having an interactive discussion guided by action-oriented questions related to data skills and confidence. And we'll provide more details on that later. And finally, we'll share campaign updates and engagement opportunities. So the first few parts of the session will be recorded and shared online later, but the interactive discussion will not be recorded. We will be capturing everyone's inputs in a shared Google document instead. Finally, we hope this event sparks new ideas and actions that can advance progress towards a fair data future for all. We encourage you all to share your reflections and thoughts online on social media using the Data Values hashtag. So before I introduce our next speaker, who will share how their organization is democratizing data skills and confidence, I want to quickly share more about the Data Values Manifesto that was recently launched. So to provide an overview, the Data Values Project is a global movement working to create a fair data future for all. Since launching in September, numerous amounts of people and organizations are engaged in shifting how we design, collect, fund, manage, and use data so that everyone everywhere shares in its benefits. The Data Values Project is a collective effort to ensure data systems help and empower people instead of harming and excluding them. Through the project, we are working to increase awareness and willingness to act on 5 calls of the Data Values Manifesto, while also supporting institutions to put these ideas into practice. In order to shift how governments, organizations, and people design, collect, fund, and manage and use data, this requires actions on 5 fronts outlined in the Data Values Manifesto. These actions include, number 1, which is supporting people to shape how they're represented in data. So essentially, people must have a say in data design and collection that affects their lives. Everyone deserves to have their needs, priorities, and experiences as they define them captured in data. Number 2 is invest in public participation for accountability. So people must be included in decisions related to data use and reuse. This is essential to hold leaders accountable, protect people from harm, and improve lives. Number 3, which is democratize data skills for greater equity, and what is the focus of today's discussion as well. So we know that everyone everywhere needs the skills and confidence to engage, understand, and communicate with data. And in doing so, this builds people's ability to think critically about data, make well-informed decisions, and increases data use by individuals, organizations, and governments. This is why the Data Values Manifesto specifically urges action to democratize data skills for greater equity. And in just a few moments, we'll hear from an organization that's contextualizing data skills and confidence. We have number 4, which is create cultures of transparency, data sharing, and use. So all leaders must invest in strengthening cultures of data use and reuse. Repeated positive experiences of regulating, sharing, and using data for public good will build trust. And finally, number 5, which is fund open and responsive data systems so that all people share the benefits of data. So governments and donors must dedicate more funding to data systems that support action and promote participation and inclusion from start to finish. So essentially, what the manifesto is really urging is that by working together and acting now, we can create a fair data future for all. So we encourage you all to explore and incorporate the manifesto within your communities, organizations, and institutions to ensure that we all benefit from data processes as well. So with that said, I'm honored to introduce our next speaker, Brouwen Robertson, the director and co-founder of Data for Change. Brouwen, over to you.
Oh, thanks so much, Fadumo. I'm super excited to be here today and to speak. And as always, I get really nervous when I'm in a room full of amazing people who are doing exactly the kind of work that I'm also so passionate about. So I won't take very long. And one of the main aims of today is that we get to hear from the data values advocates, or 3 of them anyway, and that we get to share our thoughts and ideas as a community for the first time around what data confidence means to us and how we can use that to create a fairer data future for all. So yeah, my name is Bronwyn Robertson. Data for Change is a non-profit organization based in London, but we have a global network based in more than 90 countries around the world. This is our Twitter handle at Data for Change, if you'd like to follow us and join our community too. But our mission is to defend human rights with data. And so just a tiny little bit about me. I was a classical violinist who wrote a PhD about underground rock music in Iran. And then somehow along this journey, became really interested in how we can use numbers to increase the impact of the narratives that we tell. It's a long story. I'd love to meet you all individually and share it with you one day. But Data for Change originated in 2014 in the context of working with human rights organizations that were locking away a lot of really important information in annual reports to funders. And we really saw an opportunity to get data analysts, designers, technologists, and storytellers together from all over the world with human rights defenders and to co-create. This was really important, to work together, not an agency, studio, client relationship, but really to co-create some meaningful data-led projects that could create a really big social and political change. Yeah, so fast forward to 2022, we've now worked on more than 50 data-led projects, and we have 3 core areas that we work. So we look at collect, coach, communicate. And so the first one here that we have a slide is about collecting data. And for us, it's really important that data collection is, we're moving towards it not being an extraction. A lot of us are working with and in communities where our experience of data is somebody comes in with a survey. Many times we're paid to complete a survey, but the people who are asking the questions don't belong to the community who the questions are about. And so here, this is often people in positions of power. So we're not designing data collection methods either. We're working with communities around the world to understand what type of data collection methods, whether that's in one case in Yemen, we co-created a Wi-Fi hub that people could connect to from their mobile phones to engage with data. We've created interactive data murals together, just to show that data collection doesn't have to be something that is owned by people in positions of power, and they shouldn't be making decisions about communities without them. And we can change that. And the key thing is like collecting data about people automatically shows that it's without them. And that kind of brings me to the second part of our work, which is around coaching. And I think, this is where the confidence aspect comes in. And for us, okay, maybe skills are important, but confidence is something that is really key when working with data. So many people think that you have to be a statistician, a mathematician, have a university degree to work with data. And it's simply not true. There's so much that you can do without even touching a computer or a spreadsheet. And so we have things like data boot camps and 12-week data fellowships that focus on skills and confidence, but we also have things like creating human scatter plots or data personality quizzes, because we want data to be fun and not something that people are scared of or think that data is for somebody else and not them. And then, of course, when we have the data, it's about how we communicate that in meaningful ways. I think you might have skipped one slide, Fatima, unless yeah, this one. It's about communicating that data. And this is something, so here are a range of different projects, and I'll focus on some of them in a minute, but communicating is, again, not about inventing something completely new. It's about working with the tools that we have. So if we look at number 3 in our data values manifesto, we have this kind of key phrase that everyone everywhere must gain confidence to engage with and use data. And that's really, really key for us at Data for Change. And confidence, okay, this is about ability or having trust in people, plans, or the future. So being confident to use data is kind of one of these goals. But what if instead of talking about being data literate, we start talking about data confidence, being, I'm data confident, or being data curious, or being data critical? Like, are there other things that we can talk about that give access to the data values community more readily than talking about and focusing on skills and literacy? And that's something that we've been thinking about a lot at Data for Change, because a lot of people feel like this, which is, I'm showing a slide right now of, it's an animated GIF, and it's one of the Muppets, like a puppet screaming with their mouth open, looking completely panicked. And a lot of people feel really panicked when we talk about data. But we envisage a world, and I'm showing a slide now, where there's an animated person riding on a unicorn in front of a spreadsheet with the words data to the side in bright colors and a pink background. And this is really the kind of future that we envisage, where people think that data is fun, that people try and experiment with different things. So one of the key things that this is, and now I'm showing a slide with another animated GIF. So you can tell that at Data for Change, we really like animated GIFs. I'll describe this one too. It's a pizza box, and somebody's cutting it to create plates for the pizzas and also to store the leftover pizza. And there's a title on the slide that says Hacking the Box. And the key thing here is that we don't need to create something new. We just need to work with what we've got. And last night, actually, at the Information is Beautiful Awards, we were recognized for a project that we collaborated with the Social Justice Centre's working group in Dandora, which is an informal settlement in Kenya. And they had designed a way to tell and share the stories of the police brutality that they'd experienced, but also their resilience during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we put together a team to work with them to create, and this is still during lockdowns as well. So a remote team, we worked together from 7 different countries, and they created on the walls outside their community center interactive murals that their community could gather together and share their stories about the pandemic and kind of create a data set that would be meaningful for their community. And the last project that I wanted to share in terms of data, and Fadumo said earlier about a fairer data future where we don't harm or exclude, we created a project together with an organization in Ethiopia called Together, who work with persons with visual impairments. And this project was taking open data from the World Bank on Ethiopia and then presenting it in a story of a young woman called Desta, and sonifying that data into an audio story, which was then performed in schools using flute and voice. And so I guess the key things here really are about confidence, hacking the box. We don't need to come up with something radically innovative every time we do something with data, because we all really have a potential to make an incredible impact with that. So I look forward to hearing about what our data values advocates are doing as well. Thank you, Fadumo.
Thank you, Bronwyn, for sharing your knowledge and insights with us. There's definitely a lot more for us to explore, and we can discuss further in the breakout groups that'll happen later on as well. But before we get into the breakout discussions, we wanted to share some exciting news and hear from some inspiring speakers. So we're excited to announce the new cohort of 7 data value advocates from around the world who will lead a global movement to create a fair data future for all. The new data value advocate cohort will brings together community activists to champion data values and shift attitudes and approaches to data. So during the open call for the Data Value Advocates program, we had close to 400 applicants from over 66 countries, with 70% of applicants from Africa, 10% from Asia, and 5% from Latin America and the Caribbean. And a lot of these individual interests included LGBTQI+ data rights, disability inclusive data, and youth. So there was a lot of momentum, and that does not go unnoticed, and we're super excited to engage further with the advocates themselves, but also those who were interested in the program. And so with that said, I'm so honored to announce and introduce the 7 new data value advocates. So first, we have Yazid Mikael, who is a policy advocate, a data scientist, storyteller, and a social development professional from Nigeria, who's committed to increasing awareness and action on data literacy and use from community to national levels. We have Mayuri Dumal, who is a writer and a gender activist from India, focused on bringing knowledge of language, gender, and ethnicity from the margins to the mainstream. We have Boom Jun Baek, who's a youth leader and activist from Korea living in the United States. Jun is an advocate for data privacy, digital surveillance, and has experience working in artificial intelligence. We have Salvain Ovidi, who is a disability rights and climate justice activist living in the Democratic Republic of Congo, who's focused on ensuring people with disabilities live dignified and independent lives, understand their human rights and impacts of data. We also have Benedette Venaruso, who is a youth leader from Italy, living in Estonia, and is interested in the impacts of gender data biases and shaping European discourse and integration. We also have Daniel Carranza, who is a civil society leader and advocate for open data, open government, and civic tech in Uruguay and across Latin America, and is committed to embedding equity at the heart of data systems. Finally, we have Angeline Akai Lodi, who is a disability rights advocate from Kenya, who is dedicated to promoting a barrier-free society where everyone is treated with dignity. So we're incredibly excited to engage and learn from these 7 advocates, and we encourage you all to connect and share your ideas with them. And so for the next year, the Data Value Advocates will lead the Data Values campaign to support others, especially from marginalized communities, to engage and push for a fair data future. But more specifically, the advocates will increase awareness and action on data values by speaking at or hosting workshops, events around the data values agenda. They will develop or participate in communication opportunities and meet with decision makers to encourage action on data values. The advocates will also grow a movement for a fair data future by creating avenues for individuals and communities to engage in and lead campaign activities. Finally, they will explore critical issues around data values by exploring an area of interest and produce outputs to shift mindsets and connect individuals and organizations across our network with relevant expertise and receive mentorship and guidance. So there are many exciting advocate activities being planned for the next year, and we're so excited to have all 7 on board to champion data values and shift attitudes to achieve a fair data future. So with that said, I know some of you are very eager to hear directly from a few of the advocates themselves today. So please help me welcome Mayuri, June, and Angeline, who will be sharing their experiences with building people's data skills and confidence. So first we will have Mayuri. Mayuri, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Fadumo. So hi, I am Mayuri, and I'm from India. I work with the tribal girls in Nasik district of Maharashtra region. And this is a action research project where we work with girls to bring their own experiences into mainstreams. And that is something inspires me to work on data. So as earlier said in this meeting, people are the owners of the data. And since ages, the information and data has been in use to influence our own lives, and still we are excluded. So for common people, data is something about mathematics or statistics or something which researchers or scientists cup of tea. But as we all know, that's not the real thing. and hence people are tend to be afraid of the term data, and data is so much in manipulating our choices, access to everything. And hence, as the biggest stakeholders of data, we as a common people should understand how it works. So that's where data literacy comes in the picture, and hence it is very important, I feel. As an action researcher, I have seen how marginalized communities culturally have low confidence and literacy about data, which also has different intersections of class, caste. In Indian context, it is caste, and gender. Uh, and I have also seen how literacy about data can increase not only data, but everything. Literacy about everything can increase the negotiation power of people. And I have seen real experiences of this negotiation power thing, because literacy and knowledge automatically boosts up our confidence, and people start talking about their rights. I think what we are talking around fairer data future, it is about transparency, participatory decision making, accountability, and equality of opportunities. So all this is possible only by educating people, and education about data will their uh, empower their voices, and it can be used to redefine the age-old structures of the society. This is what I feel. And to ensure this, that data benefits everyone, the collection process should become open and transparent, uh, because it is not participatory yet. Many intellects are doing research, and they select really small samples, and actual real marginalized issues get ignored because of this sampling. So yeah, that's the thing I want to focus on, that it should be participatory. uh, for this, we also need to change the standard formats of data collection to reach grassroots, and making it more open and approachable to them. And making it approachable also has the context of languages, because India is a really diverse country where we have around more than 400 languages, and more than thousands of dialects of these languages. So to make it approachable, we also have to convert all the knowledge and information in the regional languages, so that people feel closer to it. And this will ensure larger impact on how data is collected and how it is used in first place. So uh, it is yes, it is about diversity, and this will also ensure the inclusion of people. In also in my work as a gender activist, I work for community sensitization and knowledge translation, where I come across these challenges of uh, being English language of hegemony, and the people are scared of it. So to make the processes more inclusive, uh, this is the one thing we need to look for. uh, yeah, I have some examples of girls I'm working with. So these girls are uh, these are girls from marginalized communities and tribal background. So they are shy, they don't talk much. And when we do the capacity building about gender rights, we have seen them negotiating for their education, and how can they delay their marriages, as early and forced marriages uh, is the case here, and girls are not able to negotiate upon it. So through the literacy, I have seen that they are trying to negotiate, and they are delaying their marriages and going to colleges. So that's the thing. That's the thing which tells me that yes, literacy can and awareness can bring the change. Uh, Mobilizing marginalized communities can also be the biggest challenge in this process, because their main priorities are really basic needs like daily wages, food, and shelter. So we have to also think about such challenges to involve people in the data literacy process and confidence building. Uh, yeah, and coming to the end of my comment, I just want to say that fairer data future should be inclusive, sensitive, and participatory, in my perspective. And to achieve it, we all can try to shift the knowledge creation authority from few people to all people, and especially to those who are kept unheard since ages. And this is where we should change the focus of funding to make it inclusive. Like, funding is the thing where everything comes together. Financing the data literacy is the major action we should focus on, because that will automatically help to be inclusive, help to be participatory, and translate the knowledge we have in some languages to all. So yeah, uh, that's me. Thank you for inviting me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mayuri. Your comments were insightful, particularly around the participatory nature, and really speaks to the importance of building data skills and literacy. So next, we will hear from Youth and Data Policy Advocate June. June, over to you to share your comments around building people's skills, data skills, and confidence.
Thank you very much. My name is June Beck. I currently work as a software engineer. I also work as a privacy advocate and co-founder of youth advocacy group called Youth for Privacy. And what I want to talk about is basically how the Data Values project helped us to basically articulate what you think about when it comes to data. So as part of the Youth for Privacy, we host workshops around the world, both in person and virtually, to educate the youth about not only the importance of privacy, but also how the data economy works and what are the steps that they can take individually to decide how much of data they want to give to corporations and to governments. And one thing, there's actually two things I learned giving these like workshops, whether it be like Buenos Aires to Seoul. One thing is that there is definitely a disconnect between the skills needed to understand the data economy and how everything works technically versus the ordinary day-to-day experience. So that disconnect can be addressed through education. The second part is that whenever we host workshops, we have a session where we want the youth to come together and think about what are the values that we want to have when it comes to handling our data. And we found out that the data values is such a good tool in articulating one might be a good, sensible, common sense approach when it comes to how people want their personal data being used. So I think that like already like I use it to kids in Seoul, to New York, and to Buenos Aires, and their values very much synced with the data values program. So I think I'm gonna give like a shout out to the folks for creating this amazing, great 5 values. So on top of that, I think that what the community needs to do is actually like acknowledge the fact that in order for us to interact in the modern society, where internet and technology fuels a lot of our interactions, there needs to be some sort of a negotiation. What the popular media seems to portray is that it's like in a binary either-or situation, where you have to give all your data, or you don't want to give any of your data. What actually happens in reality is that there is a negotiation process between individuals making decisions on how comfortable they are in sharing some sets of data to some participants. And what I think we need to do as a community is to have these people understand that there is some sense of trade-off taking place. You could, for example, give your data to this website, which is going to give you amazing features in exchange for your personal data. And what needs to happen is that we need to make sure that that corporations or government or any other entity is trustworthy enough for us to give our data. And then in turn, we get some articulate sense of how much data we're giving them and what are we getting in return. So in sense of that exchange, there needs to be a lot of education and outreach so that people understand that this exchange is happening in the first place. Not a lot of people know that this exchange is happening as well. People view internet and technology as a black box. And that could also have negative ramifications. So that's why I'm excited to join as data values advocate and hope to work with other advocates and do amazing stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, June, for sharing your experiences around data skills and confidence in the work you're doing within that area. Finally, we have disability rights activists Angeline. Angeline, over to you to share some remarks.
Thank you very much, Fadumo. Hello, everyone. My name is Angeline Akai Lodi. I'm a disability rights advocate in Kenya, committed to the provision of equal opportunities to all. I've been thinking about this, the fairer data and how it impacts on persons who in the past were marginalized. And I believe a fairer future is key. Data future is key in the socio-cultural, economic, and political development, and must promote inclusivity where no one is left behind. When we are doing our advocacy, a lot of time we are asked, how many people, for example, how many children with disabilities are out of school? How many women with disabilities are facing gender-based violence? So, as even we are when we encourage our communities to be self-advocates, we have to let them know where data is important and why it is important, and can be as simple as asking how many women in the last meeting called by the village elders. You know, as persons with disabilities, we have to be seen being part of all aspects. So in these meetings that are called by, for example, the ward administrators, we start by asking questions. We may begin to see the gaps. We may begin also to see how many persons with disabilities and the period over time. If no one is actually invited, we ask ourselves, what can we do to ensure that persons with disabilities are at the forefront and they're not left behind? So with this questioning, then we make sure that persons with disabilities issues are addressed and are brought at the forefront, so that we can have a fairer future for all in terms of data. On my experience as a woman with disability and in a network, it has possible to counter multiple barriers. This affects the presentations in engagements, and also by coming together, the other women and persons with disability has been possible to engage with the United Nations Human Rights Mechanism, engage with also donors to supporting programming where women with disabilities and persons with disability are leading in activities. And this is supported by them being available data, evidence to show how they experience multiple discrimination and why or where there is need to put a focus on them, we make sure that the gaps are being the gaps are handled and are not left unturned. First, communities have to be shown why it is important to have data, how data is used or used to inclusion and also participation, especially for the marginalized groups. For example, the census communities where engagement of persons with disabilities in the interpretation of the data and how it is used to their benefit were gaps that really needed to have been felt, and persons with disabilities should have been that behind, but our statistics to ensure that categories of persons with disability are taken care of, and also that the people are empowered to ask that how data collection or data appear as a
It seems
and
like
so
we
the
may.
concept that data really to be by
It seems that we may have lost Angeline. Angeline, if you
Hello?
can hear us, I think there's a bit of connection issues.
Hey Fadumo, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. So so once this urge for persons with disabilities to engage with data is created, because again, it can be used to benefit of duty bearers that most of the citizens are not empowered to use data. So this has to be overhauled and citizens see why it's extremely important to engage. What I want to explore as a data value advocate is to create this desire to engage with the data by the disability community, especially in marginalized groups such as Indigenous women with disabilities. I would wish to engage with the disability movement in Kenya to explore data usage for enhance work with these communities and the block ability that can be used to pursue of inclusion of persons with disabilities in the communities. I also want to be more active at the data national level, more so around discussions that are happening on disability specific survey in promoting inclusive behind, when we do not have disaggregated data on how many children with disabilities are in school, for example, and further how many children with different disabilities are not in school, we may not change the situation, and disabilities will continue fighting on the same. So disaggregated data must be able to explore different characteristics, and importantly so, disability, because data is itself what we have, and it shows the levels of high inequalities that exist between persons with disabilities and those without disabilities. So building people's data skills and confidence to be inclusive must begin at the bureaus of statistics, and also engaging with persons with disabilities to explore how to make data systems more inclusive. Hand in hand, these skills must also be built for persons with disabilities to be the engine with bureaus of standards who well as administrative data to be able to question when they feel that the data is not inclusive. For example, in Kenya, I talked about the census where the Washington Group of Question was was not well addressing persons with disabilities with their diversities. So that's something that really needs to be worked on with the data value advocates, and including persons with disabilities rights advocates. One takeaway that I want people to leave away with is the need not only to disaggregate data by disability, but importantly, to disability types. It is also important to consider that disability is not a homogeneous experience, and that just as human diversity, if we don't want to leave anyone behind, we must be willing to account for each and everyone based on their different characteristics. So I pick a quote borrowed from the guidance notes to data collection and disaggregation Office of High Commissioner of Human Rights. I quote, "We can only monitor progress if we have data that is disaggregated by sex, age, race, ethnicity, income, migration status, disability, and other characteristics relating to the grounds of discrimination prohibited by human rights law." So, end quote. Only if we track progress for different population groups in all counties we can ensure that no one is indeed being left behind. So I thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to a wonderful year full of more changes that will ensure that everyone is being represented with regard to data, and that we see progress in the long run. So thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Angeline. And thank you for sharing that very compelling quote there at the end. I know we had a bit of connection issues, so if you're comfortable sharing your talking points with everyone today, I'm sure people will love to learn more about some of the comments you've made. So thank you again to all three advocates who spoke today. And if anyone would like to connect with Mayuri, June, or Angeline, please feel free to do so. We can share their contact details in the chat. And so now I am going to hand it back to Bronwyn, who will walk us through the next section of this event.
Thanks, Faduma. I'd just like to kind of reflect a little on the amazing presentations from the three advocates before we break out into some rooms together. Angeline, although your audio was cutting out, I loved your message about the importance of inclusivity and accessibility, and also really importantly, the need not just for disaggregated data, but that the disaggregated data actually needs to be granular enough for us to be able to understand intersectionality better. And that's an especially important issue too for LGBTQ communities, among others. June, I was super excited to hear about your global work, raising youth awareness about data exchange and the negotiations that we make on a daily basis, and also transparency, or rather the lack of it. I'd also really be interested in considering what happens when giving or not giving data is actually kind of not a choice. And Mayuri, I loved your comments about moving from the few people to all people. And I wanted to end on repeating your words that a fairer data future is inclusive, sensitive. That was key for me, that stood out: inclusive, sensitive, and participatory. So we're going to spend a few minutes in breakout rooms to discuss these topics. And it's just an open space. It's our first community meeting for the Data Values Project, and it's really a chance just to get to know what we're working on. We've got some kind of questions that we can focus our discussions around, but please feel free to share your own ideas. All that we ask is that each group would nominate a note taker and then add those thoughts into a shared Google document that Kate is going to add the link to in the chat. If you have any questions at all, please let us know, but we want this to be a time where you can just meet each other and start conversations that will hopefully be continued long after this. I'll pass back to you, Faduma, for the logistics in terms of timing, because I know that we might not have exactly the same amount of time anymore.
Awesome. Thanks, Bronwyn. So Kate has shared the link in the chat. So if everyone can access that, that'd be great. And then Over to you, Kate, to start to launch the breakout rooms. And happy discussions, everyone. Looking forward to coming back as a group to talk more. Sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute. But thanks, Kate. I'll hand it back over to Bronwyn, who will walk us through the community share back, and we'll spend about 5 minutes on this component.
Well, I was just going to say for Duma that I think that when I've been looking in the collaborative Google Doc, that there is a huge amount of incredible thoughts in there from all different perspectives. I can skim through and have a look at some things that stand out to me, but one suggestion I was going to make that maybe the data values team and advocates can do is maybe to summarize the document and share it back to everybody who's participated, so that we can kind of have a combined I don't know, asset from today that summarizes all of our thoughts. I thought it was really interesting because I've been thinking about data confidence for a long time in a very specific way. And I think for me, it was really interesting to see how differently it can be interpreted. That was really I think that there was something here that stood out that, okay, data confidence looks like data is transparent and accessible to all people, no matter their background and experience working with it. And people understanding how to read and using their voices to uphold their rights. I loved the long list of the skills that everybody wants to learn. So it's like maybe something that we can also do is put together some of the free online resources that relate to some of the skills that people have put in there. But there's everything from machine learning to Python. What else is another one? Going beyond tables and graphics towards more powerful and intuitive data visualization. There's a huge volume of resources that are free that can do some of these things for us. So I think at Data for Change, we've got a few lists of different tools and things that we're very happy to share. In our group, we talked about confidence as also maybe being confident in the data that you have, and whether it addresses the needs of the end user. And something that really stood out to me as well is the something that as a woman, I have also experienced this kind of gender gap in feeling maybe sometimes imposter syndrome of working or trying to work in the data space. And I think it is and has changed over time, but I don't think that change is necessarily evenly distributed around the world. And in our group particularly, people reflected on there still being a lot of barriers as women to wanting to participate in the data space. Maybe we have a couple of minutes before the end for each group to, or not, we definitely won't have for each group to come off mute, but for Duma, it might be easy for you in terms of if you're timekeeping to just pick a couple who have hands up. Maybe we can ask for hands up if anybody would like to share something that really stood out from their group discussion. And
yeah, thanks, Bronwyn. Yeah, well, I think that's a great idea. I see we already have a few hands up, and then if anyone else wants to share any thoughts, please raise your hand. We won't call on groups necessarily, but we'll just sort of, call on the people that have their hand raised. So I see Usman has his hand raised. Usman, do you want to share a few thoughts?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I really enjoy me being part of this meeting because it's a really great opportunity. Among the group we have, I'm able to meet somebody who is a data visual, somebody who can do data visualization very well. But the issue we have in this kind of data is most of us, we need to look at the policy of the government in the data that we are collecting. That is one. Two, many civil society organizations, when given them the data, they also manipulated it to the best way they know they can satisfy themselves. So you see, the confidence in the data we are giving them matters a lot, because if you are going to have a data, then definitely that data should be what? It should be within you and the person that are giving the data, because it's a bunch of secrets between the two parties. Because data does not need any plagiarism, because if there is plagiarism in data, then definitely that data is no more a data, it's just a numbers. So that is what I have to say. And also many of us want to learn different skills because of the data analysis and the data visualization. So as the country is moving, or let me say the world is going to a digital side, definitely we need so much data skills in terms of data collection, data analysis, and so many software that is going to ease us. Because one, me, I'm talking like a forester because I'm a forest and wildlife officer. Let me say a volunteer yet. What I understand with many forests have been deforested, and if you want to have the data of the forest, definitely you need much resources. And our wildlife every day they are being in danger. The wildlife there are no more conserved, especially in my country where I come from, that is in Nigeria. So we need seriously how to get this data and how to even publicize this data. Thank you.
Thank you, Usman, for sharing your thoughts. Yazid, I see you have your hand raised as well. Do you want to share a few comments?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Fadumo, for giving me this opportunity. So I was in a group with Eric, Martina, and Usman, and myself, and Hawa, so where we talk about data confidence, all the question literally. So what stood out for me is when we're talking about data confidence and the so many different perspectives at which people look at data confidence from. Some talk about data confidence from the security and privacy part. Some talk about it from data governance perspective. Some talk about it from the people and the data itself perspective. So generally what I've come to conclude is just that it's not really something technical, it's just the basic, and someone in part of our team said just people understanding what data is being used to make decisions for them and how it's being used. And when we go to collect data, sometimes you just collect data without informing the person what you want to use with his data, or how stakeholders just share people's data. And also one of the challenges I think that also kind of risk in terms of data confidence is lack of data availability, because some people don't have data, especially on what they are working on. So they feel like, okay, since they have somewhat similar data, they could just manipulate it and something like that. So that was what really stood out for me about data confidence. And it's just amazing how people are willing to learn different skills to solve real life problem in their community and to make the world generally a better place for everyone. So thank you, Fadmo.
Thank you, Aziz, for sharing those thoughts. In the given the time, we'll take comments from two more folk. Caroline, I see you have your hand up as well. Do you want to share some thoughts?
Yes, if it's me. I don't know if there is any other Caroline, but if it's me, thank you. Yes. Well, one thing that I think is so hard and so nuanced in our group is, I think Milisena is her name. She's working, getting the skills and working in gender equality. And, you know, I was discussing the cultural barriers to achieve equality. That, you know, what do you measure? How do you, what is it that you need to address? So what is it that you need? What data do you need to collect in order to really address, but what is the problem you are addressing? Because women are eager to be leaders. Women are eager to be, you know, to thrive, to, I don't think the problem is in the woman as such. It's the structures of society that are really constraining and oppressing. And if we don't go to those structures, which are invisible, difficult to grasp, and not necessarily we are aware of them, how, you know, how can we really address gender equality more to the point women thriving and being in leadership positions? Is super hard. And how do we, you know, what is it that we need so that we can address the right challenge? That was, Milisena was saying exactly that. And I think that is key, and there is no recipe to that. And so, sorry, yeah, I'm just kind of, I get a bit passionate about it, but yeah, I think that's super important, and it's difficult to put your fingers on. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for highlighting a few of those structural barriers, and yeah, for highlighting highlighting those points. Finally, we'll hear from Denise. Denise, if you want to share your thoughts.
Okay, thank you. So basically what I picked out from my group, which really marked me, was the fact that we were able to come at this one conclusion about data, which is the approach. Yeah, we spoke about like answering all the questions. We kind of highlighted the problems, especially the barriers, which is a major problem as to what we face now in, I think, in every part of the world. So I think the key thing we ended at was approach. How do we approach data, or how do we approach how do we approach data? How do we make it look like, we don't make it look like a conversation, we don't make it look like, oh, it's supposed to address societal issues. We just make it look so uptight, academics fully. It's like you need a particular field in order to be able to be in a data space or in a data field per se. And now I think that if we are looking at solving issues related to data, we realize that a lot of people are actually interested in data, but now this approach, how do we make it come out to them? So I think if we could work on the approach on how people get to, like, you know, see data, I'm like, oh, I'm actually interested in it, meaning that I don't need to have some sort of mathematical background and all the rest, then I think we'll have more people on board to help us address this issue that we've all seen. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Denise. And I think the approach is an important aspect to addressing some of these barriers as well. I just want to say thank you to everyone who shared their comments, but also to everyone who added their thoughts and their inputs in the document as well. And thank you to Bronwyn for facilitating the conversation as well. And so I look forward to reading more of what was discussed and written in the document. And of course, we encourage you all to go through each group's comments as well. So before we come to an end, I wanted to quickly share a few data value campaign and engagement opportunities and a look ahead into 2023. So in terms of engagement opportunities, here are 10 ways that you can engage in now. So 10 ways for you to take part in the Data Values campaign. The first one is open up the conversation online. And you could do this by engaging in Twitter chats, using the Data Values campaign social media toolkit, and using the Data Values hashtag as well. We encourage you to share your ideas with us and the world by writing a piece in the Data Values Digest, for example, and we'll share a lot of these resources with you all in just a moment. And we encourage you all to get creative with communications by hosting fireside chats, creating photo essays, or even contributing to a podcast, for example. We encourage you all to reflect internally by exploring the data values agenda and what it means for yourself and for your colleagues through an internal workshop. We encourage you all to connect with your community by helping others to understand how data impacts their lives and what change we need by hosting community workshops, for example. We encourage you all to bring people together by raising broader awareness, by hosting broader awareness around data values, by hosting side events at major convenings. And we encourage you all to build coalitions by collaborating with existing networks or collaborating with others that are already engaged in the Data Values Manifesto by checking out the campaign bulletin board. And then the last two are pass on your learnings by sharing your material with others who are engaged in the campaign, and grow the movement by sharing your work with others by attending this bi-monthly data values community call, and encouraging others to join the campaign by signing up for the campaign mailing list. So these are just a few ways to engage, but please do get in touch with us if you have any ambitious ideas and need some support. Kate, if you want to share the campaign toolkit in the chat, all of these engagement opportunities are highlighted in detail within that campaign toolkit as well. Finally, I wanted to quickly highlight campaign opportunities that will take place in 2023. So first, we will have some high visibility moments in the new year, which will include a series of events, in-country workshops, and multimedia communications. We'll launch creative partnerships. So these will be opportunities for us and those who are part of the campaign to work with illustrators, designers, musicians, and videographers to explore the data values agenda. We will provide data values seed grants. So in 2023, we'll provide small grassroots initiatives to community and grassroots initiatives. And finally, the next data values community meeting will take place in February. And if you have any suggestions on topics or themes, please don't hesitate to contact myself or Kate. And so, yeah, these are just a few items or activities that will happen in the new year. If any of you are interested in any of the four or any of these points that I mentioned, please feel free to also connect with Kate and I. We're happy to have some discussions around that. And then finally, to close off, the session has been really exciting, and we hope you enjoyed today's session and are leaving feeling energized and action-oriented. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day and week, and thank you for joining.